Samantha Tran had always thought loyalty mattered. 12 years of building brand identities, salvaging campaigns that were falling apart, staying up past midnight to revise client pitches, and flying across the country on red-eye flights just to make sure a client felt heard. She had done it all, and with heart. So when the email landed in her inbox at 9:16 a.m., on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning, the chill that gripped her was more from disbelief than anger. The subject line read, "Important update regarding your role." She remembered staring at it, coffee still warm in her hand, the gentle hum of her desktop monitor, the only sound in her small but tidy home office. She clicked it open, fully expecting a project change, or maybe a new team structure after all they'd been testing that new AI integration tool for the past 6 months. Instead, the message began with "Dear Samantha, due to recent restructuring efforts and in pursuit of more cost-efficient operations," her vision blurred. She scrolled quickly to the bottom, searching for some sort of catch, a follow-up meeting, a note of appreciation, anything human, but all that remained was a sterile signature and a PDF attachment titled "Severance Package, Final.pdf." No phone call, no warning, no conversation with her manager, Ted, who had just the previous Friday complimented her innate emotional intelligence during a quarterly review. She sat frozen, staring at the screen. The cursor blinked back at her as if it too were unsure what came next. It wasn't the job loss that hurt the most. It was the replacement. A month ago, she had been part of a closed-door meeting where leadership announced the pilot of an AI-driven campaign manager, Athena they called it, because of course they did. It was sleek, fast, and pitched as the future. Samantha had even helped train the system, feeding it old campaign results, client preferences, tone guidelines, everything she'd learned over a decade. She thought she was helping design a tool to make her work better. She hadn't realized she was designing her own obsolescence. By noon, her Slack access was revoked. Her email bounced back. Her company ID had already been deactivated. She couldn't even log into the digital asset library to download her portfolio pieces. 12 years reduced to a polite PDF and silence. She shut her laptop, got up from the chair slowly, and walked to the window. The world outside was indifferent. A bird landed on her balcony, blinked at her, and flew off again. It was a beautiful day. Ironically, the kind of crisp blue sky morning that once would have inspired her to write a killer tagline or craft a pitch about hope and renewal. Now it just mocked her. She didn't cry, not then. Instead, she made tea. She lit a lavender candle, and then she pulled out an old notebook she hadn't used in years, hardcover deep green with her name engraved in silver. It had been a gift from a mentor on her 3rd work anniversary. The first page had only 2 words scribbled in fountain pen, "Start something." She stared at the page for a long time. Over the next few days, the calls started. Not from HR, not from Ted, but from people she'd worked with, clients who hadn't even been notified yet. They were confused, then outraged. "Wait, they let you go?" one of them said, almost whispering like it was obscene. Another client asked if she'd moved to another agency and if they could follow. "No," she said quietly, "I haven't decided what's next." But something inside her had. At night, lying in bed, she thought about all the years she had ignored the little voice inside, the one that whispered she was building someone else's dream. The one that urged her to branch out, to build something of her own, to believe that people chose her, not just the logo on her business card. She replayed the little moments, the panicked calls from clients on Sunday evenings, the handwritten thank you notes she'd sent, the time she caught a subtle cultural mistake in a campaign translation just hours before launch, and saved a $2 million deal. None of those could be automated. None of those lived in Athena's database. But her name didn't appear on any awards. No one ever asked how she got it done, only that it was done. And now she was gone like she never mattered. 1 week passed. She stopped checking LinkedIn after the first few days. The constant stream of congratulations to the team behind our successful AI rollout felt like acid. She needed to be invisible for a while, to listen, to gather, to grieve. But grief for Samantha was always an engine. She began reviewing old client decks, not with bitterness but curiosity. She asked herself, why did this one work, or what did this brand really want? She started sketching ideas not for them but for people like them. Brands that didn't want automation, they wanted resonance, connection, story. She remembered a phrase a client had once told her after a particularly successful campaign. You didn't sell a product, you told our truth. That had stuck with her. Athena could analyze. It could optimize. But could it feel? Could it see the trembling hands of a client about to launch a product that carried their father's name? Could it sense the subtle hesitation in a voice over Zoom and know when to pivot the entire pitch? Could it understand the weight of silence? She doubted it. 2 weeks after the email, Samantha bought a domain name, emberstrategies.com. It cost $11.95. She sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling slightly, and filled out the form on the hosting site. She designed a simple landing page with one sentence. We believe marketing should feel like a human conversation. No services listed, no team page, just a sentence, a logo she doodled in Canva, and a contact form. Then she opened her Gmail, created a new account, hello, emberstrategies.com, and she waited. The next morning, she received her first message. It was from Maya, a senior brand officer at a wellness company Samantha had handled for years. I heard what happened. The email began, and I just want to say I always trusted you, not the platform. If you're building something new, I want in. Samantha stared at the message for a full minute, tears finally breaking the dam. It wasn't the loss that defined her. It was what she did with the space it left behind. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, they built a machine to replace me, but they forgot I'm not just a function. I'm the reason they stayed. 3 weeks after the layoff, Samantha Tran had settled into a strange kind of silence. Not peace. Peace implies resolution. This was more like an eerie calm before a reckoning, the kind of silence where something is quietly unraveling behind the curtain and you know it's happening, but you don't need to pull the drape just yet. You just sit still and wait for the truth to show its face. It came not in a crash, but in cracks. The first came from an ex-client, a small but fiercely loyal skincare brand in Oregon called Fern Plus Stone. Samantha had handled their rebranding the year before, helping them shift from generic natural beauty language into something richer, something that spoke of legacy rituals' roots. She still remembered the call with the founder, Lila, who broke down in tears when she saw the first draft of their new brand story. You got us, Lila had said. You really saw us. And now Lila was back. She called on a Monday afternoon, Samantha's phone buzzing against a stack of notebooks she hadn't yet sorted. I know you're not with them anymore, Lila said, skipping the pleasantries, but I needed to tell you. The new campaign they rolled out last week, it's off. Samantha sat up. What do you mean off? It's soulless. It sounds like a math equation trying to flirt. I don't know how else to explain it. It's technically correct, I guess, but it doesn't feel like us. We've already lost 1,000 followers in 3 days. The comments are brutal. Samantha closed her eyes. She could imagine it perfectly. Athena pulling sentiment data scanning, hashtag trends, and churning out something statistically flawless. And yet no human pulse, no heart. "I'm sorry," Lila Samantha said. "I wish I could help." There was a pause. "You can," Lila replied. "If you're consulting unofficially." Samantha hesitated, then smiled. "Let's talk." That was the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, the cracks widened. She heard from a mid-sized fitness apparel brand based in Austin, one of the earliest adopters of the AI system. The co-founder emailed her at 2:03 a.m. subject line, "They don't understand us." Then came a wellness retreat company, then a boutique chocolatier, then a women's leadership nonprofit. All of them had once been Samantha's accounts. All of them had been transitioned to AI-led optimization workflows. And all of them were discovering the same inconvenient truth: automation was efficient, but it was also tone-deaf. And tone, Samantha knew, was everything. Still, she wasn't actively trying to take clients away. Not yet. She was careful, only offering feedback when invited, suggesting questions rather than answers, nudging rather than steering. She didn't want to be vengeful. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. But every conversation added oxygen to a flame she thought had died inside her. One morning, Samantha received an unexpected package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box, hand-carved, polished. She opened it slowly and found a single handwritten note inside. "Athena may be smart, but you're the one with soul. Keep going." No signature. She stared at it for a long time. By now, Ember Strategies had 3 clients, unofficial, yes, but real. Samantha worked out of her kitchen, still using her personal laptop, and designing decks at night with Spotify playing quietly in the background. But every campaign she crafted, every tagline, every copy line was human. Every message was rooted in a story, in a feeling, not an algorithm. She wasn't competing on speed or price. She was competing on trust. And trust wasn't something AI could simulate. Meanwhile, back at her former company, Hyperion Group, things were beginning to falter. Publicly, the narrative was still airtight. Press releases touting cost savings, quarterly reports highlighting scalable personalization, glossy LinkedIn posts from the C-suite about embracing the future. But Samantha had eyes on the ground, friends who were still inside, whispering. The whispers grew louder. There were errors, embarrassing ones. Athena had mistaken a viral mental health awareness trend for a weight loss fad and rolled out an ad that framed feeling lighter as a goal. The backlash was swift and merciless. Clients were pulling back approvals. Some campaigns were delayed. Creative directors were frustrated they couldn't override the AI without jumping through compliance hoops. And every time they submitted feedback, Athena learned in the wrong direction. The problem wasn't just execution, it was philosophy. The leadership at Hyperion had made a fundamental error. They'd believed marketing was a science, that human behavior could be reduced to patterns, that emotion was just a formula waiting to be cracked. Samantha knew better. Emotion wasn't a code, it was chemistry. And chemistry came from real people. She didn't say anything publicly. She didn't post smug threads or throw digital shade. She just kept working. She onboarded Ferna plus Stone, officially followed by 2 others. She began assembling a small team, just freelancers at first, a copywriter she'd mentored, a graphic designer she'd worked with 5 years ago, a strategy intern who'd once written a killer headline on a Post-it note. They weren't building an empire. They were building resonance, and clients were noticing. One afternoon, she got a call from an unknown number. "Samantha, it's Eric." She paused. Eric Chan, her former VP of brand at Hyperion. They hadn't spoken since the layoff. "I need to ask you something, off the record." Samantha walked to the window phone against her ear. "Go on, what are you doing differently?" "Honestly, we've been trying to fix the drop-offs. We've reprogrammed Athena twice, but the campaigns you're rolling out, clients are talking. There's something There. Samantha said nothing for a beat. Then quietly, I listened. Eric exhaled long and sharp. "We're bleeding. I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. "But maybe it's time to remember who you're building for." She hung up. That night, Samantha updated the Ember website. She added one sentence, "We're not here to replace people. We're here to remember them." Within 24 hours, the site got 17 new inquiries. One of them was a global fashion house. She stared at the email pulse pounding. It was happening. She didn't know what came next, only that this time she wouldn't build someone else's dream. This time she'd build something that couldn't be replaced. Samantha Tran had always been cautious with risk. Raised by Vietnamese immigrant parents who worked tirelessly to build a modest life in San Jose, she was taught early that security was earned, not gambled. For years, she lived by that code. But there was something liberating, terrifying. Yes, but liberating about losing the very thing she thought she needed most: her stable job, her title, her routine. Now every day began with uncertainty, but also possibility. The name Ember Strategies hadn't been a fluke. Samantha chose it because she believed in the quiet heat of a small flame. Not flashy, not loud, but enduring. She believed that the best ideas came from that ember, the slow, thoughtful glow of something that refused to die. And as word spread about her new venture, more people were drawn to that warmth. Her apartment had transformed from a quiet retreat into a buzzing creative lab. Whiteboards leaned against the walls, covered in marker sketches of campaign funnels and messaging maps. Post-it notes dotted her fridge, some with client insights, others with personal mantras like "connection beats perfection" and "always ask why." Her first official hire was Aisha, a former brand strategist who had also been replaced ironically by the same AI tool that ousted Samantha. Aisha had sent a DM on LinkedIn after seeing the Ember site. "I'm not done telling stories. Are you hiring?" Samantha replied within 10 minutes. They met at a cafe the next day, both slightly nervous but quickly falling into rhythm. Aisha brought clarity and speed. Samantha brought vision and empathy. Together, they started building processes, client onboarding scripts, storytelling frameworks, and internal playbooks that prioritize nuance over volume. They didn't want to become a factory. They wanted to become a force. Within 2 months, Ember had secured 5 official clients, all of whom had walked away from Samantha's former employer. Not because of pricing, but because they missed being seen. One client, a mental health nonprofit, shared in a discovery call. "The AI campaigns looked good on paper, but they made us feel like a brand, not a mission. Samantha, you made us feel human again." That was the moment Samantha knew this wasn't just a rebound. This was a revolution in miniature. With each campaign, they leaned into the gray areas: emotions, contradictions, identity. Samantha refused to use templates. She read each client's history like a novel, highlighting pain points not as weaknesses, but as arcs waiting to be resolved. Soon they brought in Marco, a designer who had left the traditional agency world to work on passion projects. He created visuals that didn't just complement copy, they carried it. Then came Chloe, a junior copywriter with a knack for emotional precision. Samantha mentored her personally, helping her find the line between persuasive and poetic. Ember was becoming a family. a misfit collective of the underestimated, the replaced, and the quietly brilliant. But success came with its own shadows. One night, as Samantha reviewed a contract from a new prospective client, a major beverage startup, she noticed a clause exclusive vendor rights for 3 years. If she signed, Ember would grow faster than she'd imagined, but it would mean locking out smaller clients, many of whom had helped her get off the ground. She didn't sleep that night. At 6:30 a.m., she called Aisha. "Do we want to be big or do we want to be right?" Samantha asked, her voice low, tired. Aisha didn't hesitate. "Right, every time." They turned down the contract, and in a strange twist of fate, that decision led to more referrals. The startup's CMO, impressed by their integrity, passed their name to 3 other companies. Samantha realized then that values weren't liabilities, they were magnets. Meanwhile, Hyperion Group continued to double down on AI. Their quarterly earnings call painted a rosy picture, but insiders told a different story. Increased churn, brand confusion, frustrated creative teams. One of Samantha's former colleagues sent her a screenshot of an internal Slack thread. A senior manager had written, "We didn't replace people, we amputated relationships." That line haunted her. It also emboldened her. She started speaking publicly, small webinars at first, then podcasts, then a local entrepreneur panel. Her topic was always the same: empathy at scale. She argued that while AI could enhance efficiency, it could never replace meaning. Her voice was calm but commanding, her insights layered with lived experience. People listened, and more importantly, they remembered. By the end of the 3rd month, Ember Strategies had doubled its revenue projection. But Samantha wasn't thinking about numbers. She was thinking about impact. She launched a pilot program, the Rebuilders. It was aimed at professionals who'd been replaced by AI copywriters, strategists, analysts. Ember would train them, mentor them, and give them freelance work, not charity opportunity. The applications flooded in. One applicant wrote, "I used to write love letters between brands and their people. Now I feel like I've been ghosted by an entire industry." Samantha wrote back personally, "We hear you. Let's build something better." Every ember, she thought, holds the potential for a new fire. And Ember was just getting started. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic press release, no mass client defection, no viral expose. It was quieter than that, like a tide pulling back from the shore in slow, deliberate waves. Samantha could feel it, though, like the subtle pressure change before a storm. Clients were leaving Hyperion one by one, and Ember was becoming the refuge they hadn't realized they'd been looking for. It started with the emails. Messages trickling in at odd hours from marketing directors and founders, each carrying the same tone of weariness. "Hey, I don't know if you remember me," or "I was wondering if you're taking new clients." They always came with a subtext, an unspoken apology for not having chosen Ember in the first place. Samantha never held it against them. She knew what fear did to people: fear of change, fear of missing out on the future, fear of being the one who didn't evolve fast enough. But now fear was shifting. It was turning inward. Brands that had once prided themselves on being AI forward were facing a new reality. The algorithms were creating output, not outcomes. They had data, yes, but no direction. They had personalization, but no presence. Most importantly, they had campaigns, but no connection. One of the earliest defectors was a sustainable fashion brand in Portland that had worked with Samantha years ago. Their CMO, a soft-spoken man named Julian, requested a video call. He looked visibly drained. "We were promised more with less," he said, "but we ended up with less of everything that mattered." Samantha didn't gloat. She listened. Julian continued, I miss briefs that start with a conversation, not a spreadsheet. I miss knowing there's a person on the other end who gets what we're trying to do. AI gives us the what. You gave us the why. That became a refrain echoing from one client to the next. You gave us the why. Within 6 months of Ember's founding, they had onboarded 12 new clients, many of whom had walked directly away from Hyperion. Samantha never once pitched them. They came on their own. It was Aisha who coined the phrase during a team huddle, "This isn't growth, this is return. They're not finding us, they're coming back." And return they did. Not just clients, but creatives. Former colleagues who had either left Hyperion or were still trapped in its now soulless structure began reaching out. Marco started receiving DMs from old design teammates asking if Ember needed more hands. Chloe's inbox filled with inquiries from junior copywriters desperate to write something that didn't feel like it came from a content farm. One day, an unexpected name popped up in Samantha's email, Ted Liu, her former manager. The subject line was simple, coffee. Her stomach flipped. They met at a quiet cafe in Palo Alto. Ted looked older than she remembered, tired, his usual sharpness, dulled by something she couldn't quite name. "I owe you an apology," he said before the coffee even arrived. Samantha said nothing. "We didn't think it through," he continued. "We thought we were innovating, disrupting, but in the process we forgot what our clients actually needed." She watched him closely. "Why are you telling me this now?" Ted looked down. "Because I think you're building something real, and because I might need a job soon." Samantha didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. Later that night, she walked through the Ember Slack channels, Chakra Creative Lab, Client Wins, Dear Rebuilders, and felt a strange mix of pride and humility. What they were doing wasn't flashy, but it was working. A new metric began to emerge, not one measured in profit margins or click-through rates, but in rehumanization. Clients were sending thank you notes again. One had even sent a voice memo crying after seeing her rebranded website. "I see myself in this," she'd said. "It feels like home." Hyperion, by contrast, was spiraling. An expose broke in a trade journal detailing internal conflicts, rising turnover, and frustrated clients. One quote stood out, "The AI told us who to target but not how to care." Samantha read it twice. She closed her laptop and looked at the Ember logo glowing on her desktop. A spark had become a beacon. It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon, one of those gray slanted sky days when the world seems to lean a little heavier on your shoulders. Samantha was in the middle of reviewing a strategy deck for a new client in the education space when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Same number. She sighed, picked up, and said cautiously, "Hello, Samantha, it's Alan." The voice on the other end was clipped, deliberate, and unmistakably familiar. Alan Boyd, Chief Operating Officer at Hyperion Group. She straightened instinctively, though no one was watching. "Alan, it's been a while. Let's not pretend this is a social call. We need to talk, face to face." Her eyes narrowed. "About what exactly?" A pause. Then, "about what you've taken." The words were like static, sharp, short, accusatory. They met the next morning in a sleek conference room on the 22nd floor of a co-working building in downtown San Francisco. Samantha arrived early, her demeanor calm, but unyielding. She wore a navy blouse, hair tied back, the ember pin neatly pinned to her lapel. Across from her sat Alan's silver hair, perfectly parted suit, crisp jaw clenched like he was chewing on broken glass. He got straight to it. You've poached 16 of our former clients. No, she said, her voice even. They left on their own, and they weren't yours to begin with. Alan's eyes flared. You don't get to define ownership here. Hyperion built those relationships. Samantha leaned forward. No, I did. I spent years nurturing those brands listening when your dashboards couldn't. You replaced me with a machine that didn't know how to care, and now you're surprised they walked. That's not poaching, Alan. That's gravity. He looked like he might explode. We invested millions into Athena. We streamlined our entire marketing division to evolve beyond the human bottleneck. And in doing so, she replied, you amputated the very thing that made your agency valuable, its humanity. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Alan regrouped. He folded his hands and changed tactics. I'm offering you a deal. Samantha tilted her head. A deal. We'll acquire Ember. Bring you back in as Chief Creative Officer. Full autonomy. Budget to expand. You'll have your old team. Hell, we'll even sunset Athena quietly. It was a chess move, and a desperate one. Samantha let the moment breathe. She thought of her team, Aisha, Marco, Chloe. She thought of the Rebuilders program, the late-night edits, the notes scribbled in passion and pain. She thought of the voice memos from clients rediscovering their identity of the ember that turned into a blaze. Then she said clearly, no. Alan flinched. You'll regret this. She stood gathering her notebook. Maybe, but at least I'll regret it on my own terms. He leaned back, masking his fury with a tight smile. You think clients will keep coming to you forever? You're a blip. We're the infrastructure. Samantha turned at the door. Infrastructure without soul collapses. That evening, she returned to Ember's office, now a cozy, light-filled suite nestled above a local bookstore. The team was gathered for their weekly stories and snacks, meeting, passing around cinnamon rolls, and brainstorming ideas for an upcoming rebrand. She didn't tell them about the meeting with Alan. Not yet. Instead, she stood at the whiteboard and wrote in bold marker, they tried to buy what we built because they can't recreate what we are. The room fell silent. Then Aisha stood and clapped. One by one, the others followed. For the first time, Samantha allowed herself to feel not just pride, but defiance. Not born of anger, but of clarity. They hadn't just walked away from Hyperion. They had walked toward something Ember would never sell. 1 year after Samantha Tran had been dismissed by an email, she stood on a small stage in a converted warehouse in Oakland, speaking to a sold-out room of creatives, entrepreneurs, and quietly defiant professionals who had grown tired of being replaceable. The event, a grassroots conference called Human First, was created for those left behind by automation's gold rush, those who still believed that stories should be told by people who felt something. She wasn't flashy. She didn't use slides. She spoke plainly, truthfully, and every sentence landed like a quiet anthem. When they replaced me with AI, she said, her voice steady, they didn't just delete my role. They deleted every late-night brainstorm, every handwritten note, every breath of humanity that made those campaigns work. But here's what they didn't understand: when you erase the human, you erase the reason people care. The crowd erupted in applause. She smiled and continued. So I started over, not with funding, not with some pitch deck, just with a belief that clients don't need faster, they need real. After the talk, people lined up to speak with her. A woman in her 60s said, "Thank you for making me believe I still matter." A young black copywriter whispered, "They replaced me before I even got started." Samantha hugged them both. Back at Ember's office, the following Monday, she walked through the front door, now marked with a sleek copper plate that read, Ember Strategies. Inside, sunlight streamed through tall windows, warming the hardwood floors, and bouncing off walls filled with mood boards, sketches, client thank you cards, and framed newspaper clippings. The team had grown 16 full-time employees, a rotating network of 30 freelancers, and a growing internship pipeline through the Rebuilders program. They weren't just running campaigns now, they were rebuilding dignity. They were crafting narratives for nonprofits, legacy brands, artists, and activists. They even turned down a $5 million offer from a global tech conglomerate that wanted to collaborate on emotional brand mapping. Samantha had read the pitch and said, "You want our heart, but not our hands. That's a no." The team cheered. No one second-guessed her. But Ember wasn't just a company. It was a philosophy. In a corner room filled with plants and natural light, Aisha now led the Rebuilders mentorship track, coaching displaced creatives who were slowly re-entering a world that once discarded them. Marco oversaw the visual identity lab where he taught young designers how to translate emotion into color, shape, and space. And Samantha, she had become something she never imagined, a leader people followed, not because they had to, but because they believed in her vision. Then one morning, Chloe ran into her office with a laptop. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. It was a video clip from Hyperion's most recent shareholder meeting. Alan Boyd stood behind a lectern, visibly rattled. He was fielding questions from a clearly dissatisfied board. "We were ahead," he said. "We had the advantage. We had the tech." A reporter asked, "Then why did you lose your top 20 clients?" Alan paused. Then, with a bitter edge, "Because we tried to replace the soul of marketing with syntax, and we lost the people who knew the difference." Chloe stared at Samantha. "He means you." Samantha looked away from the screen. "It doesn't matter." But deep down it did. Not out of pride, but out of proof. Proof that the fire they built together had not only survived, it had become the lighthouse others were steering toward. That evening, as the team gathered for dinner, Samantha stood up, lifted her glass, and said quietly, "To the ones who were never replaceable." Glasses clinked, smiles spread, and laughter filled the room. In the weeks that followed, Ember launched a podcast series called Unmuted, sharing the voices of those who had once been silenced by systems that valued efficiency over empathy. The first episode featured a former journalist turned brand writer. The second, a single mother who used to write product descriptions for an e-commerce giant until she was replaced overnight. Each story ended the same way. "They thought I was a line of code, but I am a story." Ember grew, not explosively, but intentionally. They hired deliberately. They scaled only when their people were ready. They made time for sabbaticals. They celebrated small wins with the same joy as big ones. Their Christmas gift to clients that year was a handwritten letter and a personalized poem, not a discount code. By year 2, Ember had been profiled in Fast Company, Wired, and the Harvard Business Review. Samantha refused TV interviews. She didn't want to be a celebrity. She wanted to stay present. When a young intern asked her once, "What's the secret to your success?" Samantha paused and said, "We didn't try to disrupt the industry. We tried to remember the people in it." The intern nodded, then wrote it down like scripture. On the first anniversary of Ember's founding, the team gathered on a rooftop garden under string lights. Samantha brought out the green notebook, the one she had dusted off the day she was fired. She flipped to the first page, "Start something." Then she added one more line underneath, and never forget why you did.